Hi, I'm Valerie Eaton, and today we're going to bring to you answers to our criminal justice chair's question. His name is Roosevelt Rhodes. Please listen to this very important question and the answer that our candidates gave.
With unemployment way up this time from 33%, what are your plans on providing jobs and job training for the inmates that are being released? And also, how do you plan on protecting the people from crime that will increase due to the unemployment?
So first of all, we need to make sure that we adopt a legislation at the federal level that creates kind of an article. So the Florida state passed a law, it's called Article 4, that basically says if you're a felon and you served your time and you come out and now you're a rehabilitated citizen, you should get your right to vote back. So re-enfranchising people, that's important. The other thing is, of course, this decriminalizing marijuana, that's really important. We should do that, and we should also then go back and look at the people who are in prison right now for those same crimes and release them. I think we also need to do a lot across the board, things that I probably don't even know about, but we need to look at the criminal justice system, but step back even further. And I think I mentioned this before when I spoke briefly in front of you guys. I have an op-ed on this. I feel very strongly about the need for our country to address the legacy of slavery and racism. And John Conyers, every Congress, he would introduce this bill, that all it did was set up a commission to look at the legacy of slavery and of racism and make recommendations. And it was too hard for our country to pass. But I would like to, when I go into Congress, I mean, that's sarcastic. It shouldn't be. When I go into Congress, I would like to, I will either offer it or co-sponsor it. It's just fundamental. And the criminal justice, the problems we have in our criminal justice system, like what the problem that with the bail that the New York State law was fixing, those really are affecting Brown and Black communities disproportionately, especially African Americans. That's been the case all throughout, unfortunately, our history. So I really think that we need to think more comprehensively and for once and for all, do something, admit to our past sins and do something about it, because it's still living on, and we see it now with coronavirus too. I mean, my heart breaks for these communities that are taking on this burden disproportionately, because we know that service workers, I don't know what the percentage is, but they're higher percentage Brown and Black. When I look at that bus driver in New York City who did his video and he said, I don't mind, I'm doing my duty. I'm driving my bus, but people should not cough on my face. And the man is dead 10 days later, or the woman, I'm going to cry because the woman, her daughter was a grocery worker on MSNBC this morning. The poor woman was doing her job for a paycheck of $20.64 a week. And they didn't provide her with protective gear. And that's obviously not minimum wage. So anyway, I'm going off on another tangent, but my point is that criminal justice reform is very closely tied with addressing the I think we need to put more money into the nonprofits who have been doing some of that already. So now I'm going to forget the name of it, but Seth, the guy at Hudson. So I did a tour of Sing Sing back when I wasn't even running for Congress in last spring, and obviously met with the warden, the superintendent is what he's called now, and with Seth, whose name I'm forgetting, but he runs Hudson, I forget the name of it, but it doesn't matter. The point is that organization is aimed at taking the inmates and providing them with job opportunities after they leave. And it's very much works hand in hand with the prison system. So while they're in prison, they get vocational training and they get access, although there's a very long waiting list, to college education so they can get a diploma. I think we need more of that. And what it really means is a recognition that the nonprofit agencies that are in our community, they are really a partner of government and of business, and so they should receive more funding and so that there are more opportunities for this. But it is clearly a problem. The other aspect of it, of course, is to make sure that the stigma of having served is not, is not something that's an obstacle to people getting jobs later. So that's another thing that can be addressed certainly by the federal government. And of course, not directly related, but I mean, I could say more about criminal justice in general.
Our inmate population, yes, that is something I'm very passionate about. You know, it's hard not to care about criminal justice reform when you're a Black guy in the United States of America. When I worked in the Obama administration at the Department of Justice, my responsibilities included working on criminal justice reform for an attorney general who actually cared about social justice, Eric Holder. And we were looking at ways to reduce recidivism, the rate at which people recommit crimes who are leaving our federal prisons. And of course, the vast majority of inmates in the United States of America are in state prisons and in local jails. But if the federal government can lead on this issue, then I think we can see a lot of progress because the states tend to follow suit. We need to ban the box. We need to make sure that no one who is leaving an incarcerated setting is discriminated against in the employment context. And so that means that employers should not be able to consider simply the fact that somebody has a criminal conviction as a basis for denying them employment. Now, if that crime is related to the job responsibilities, then that's another issue. And for the vast majority of instances, people are able to perform these jobs that they're applying for, and they are being discriminated against simply because they made a mistake in their past life, and are never able to re-enter our economy and fully reintegrate in our society because of that thing. We also need to make sure that we don't discriminate in a housing context. People are unable to get federally subsidized housing who are leaving our prisons, which is causing them to make the same mistakes that they've made that got them into trouble in the first place. And so we have to do it holistically. It's not just about employment. When it is about housing, of course. When people can't pay something as immediate, dire as a housing expense, then that is likely to make them end up back in an incarcerated setting and is not being able to find employment. And so it's the totality of the circumstances, and unfortunately, we do not do a good job of reintegrating people into our society who have left prison or jail.
Excellent question. By the way, this is personal to me, not only because I've had family go through this process of incarceration and transitioning out as civilians, and it is tough. I have experienced that coming out of the military on a deployment, transitioning out as a civilian. So the one thing that you have to make sure is that we have transitional programs in our local community to ensure that everyone is given the equal right to achieve a better quality of living. And one is definitely make sure that they're given a job that realistically pays to live in this district. This district is too expensive. So, the big thing right now is, hey, we support $15 minimum wage. I've been saying that in the beginning, but no more. I don't say that anymore. I support a living wage that can adjust, that can match with the quality of living or the affordable, and make it more affordable for those that come out. So the problem with those that are incarcerated and transition out is that they're having a hard time being able to afford a quality of living because the jobs are not necessarily in place. So my thing is definitely make sure, and here I'm repeating the same thing, make sure that we have those that are incarcerated learning STEM again. So when they are coming out, they're able to apply for STEM jobs. And they're not being, the attitude towards them is not being untreated. They don't face mistreatment. I do support the fact that you should not know someone's criminal record as they're applying for a position. So that is good that the state removed that. I think that's really good because I have had family members that have experienced that. But I would love to see programs in, like, for instance, at Valhalla, where my sister is a correctional officer, where they are able to have people there to teach them STEM, so they can go in. When they come out, they have STEM skill sets to be able to apply for a job that is, that can keep up with the bills and live a good quality of life in Congressional District 17. It's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So what we've been experiencing within the last 3 years, there's been a big push for STEM programs. Actually, Nita Lowy supports federal funding for STEM programs in the district, but we have to make sure that funding hits the right, is actually directed to the right communities, where in places like Greenbird, and I'm assuming also as well in Peekskill, those programs are not there. STEM programs are not there. And this is a big push on the federal level, because a lot of people are complaining that even coming out of college with certain degrees, they are not able to get a job that pays pretty good with a salary. So everybody's saying, well, if the job market is changing and most of the jobs that pay really good are in STEM, so why not try to get our future generation, those that have been incarcerated, those that are more at a economic disadvantage, trained in with STEM skill sets, so they're able to compete for those jobs.
So I don't know if folks know this, but I just spent 3.5 years as a federal prosecutor, and it was the honor of my life to be a federal prosecutor and to stand up every day and say, Adam Schleifer on behalf of the United States in court to judges and to juries and making communities safer. Nothing was more motivating in my whole life than doing that my whole life. And I miss it very much every day. And so I understand the need to keep our communities safe. And I understand the potential that gets unlocked from communities when you take out crime, when you take out methamphetamine, when you take out synthetic opioids, like the kinds I was stopping from being imported from Mexico, when you take on gun violence. I put dozens and dozens of illegally possessed and illegal weapons, some of them were murder weapons, off the streets. And I saw what that did to unlock communities' potential. So thank you for that question. I think you alluded in your first part of it to a really interesting point, which is if we don't have a way for folks to reintegrate successfully, then we're going to just feed people back into the system. So what are some of my thoughts on that? One, I like what New York did in some of its ban the box legislation in terms of allowing folks to get a fair shot once they've done their time to not be discriminated against unduly in employment. I think employers do have a right at some point to learn about the backgrounds of people they hire, but I don't think folks should be rejected at the beginning step before they get a fair chance at an interview to explain where they are in their life and where they've been. I have people that on my own campaign staff that have had run-ins with the criminal justice system early in life and then straightened it out, and that's important. So, you're right. We don't have a full employment. We don't have the kind of booming economy we had 2 months ago. And so it's going to be harder for those folks to get jobs. And so we do need to look at programming at all levels of government to ensure that we get people acclimated back in and put into situations. I know in the federal system, we had a role with what they called halfway houses. So people, when they're released, they're not just sent out into the world. They're released. They get support towards a job. They have to have a job, and they build up a life that way. And so that's really important. And I think protecting people from crime, your second point, is important too. When stress goes up, when fear goes up, when jobs go down, we got like clockwork, crime seems to happen. And unfortunately, I know this. Gun sales have gone through the roof lately too, because people are scared, and so that's a troubling thing. I think people have a right to have a weapon. I understand what the Second Amendment says, but we don't have a right to have weapons of war. We don't have a right to have people who can't safely possess weapons have weapons. We don't have a right to have people with mental health issues having weapons. So I think that's a really important point, and it involves work across all levels of government. So when I was a federal prosecutor, I realized I couldn't get my job done unless I was working closely with local police officers and people at all levels of government, because it takes a whole village to stop crime. And I know that, and so I like the question you've asked, and I think the stimulus payments, which originally were part of the first wave of the CARES, the $1,200 in people's pockets, I think we're going to probably need another round of those, at least another $1,200, while also working with employers to tell employers we're going to give you stimulus only on the condition you don't let your people get laid off. So you can only get our money if you promise not to fire people. Because when you fire people, you also get rid of their health insurance. You create all sorts of other problems. So my view is we need to be, and I've worked with a former economist who worked for Pete Buttigieg about this. We need to tell companies, we'll have the aid for you, but only if you promise not to fire anyone. And then we need direct cash payments, another few rounds of that to people if this goes on much longer. So I hope that answers some of my perspectives on that.
Well, first of all, I was proud to support our criminal justice reforms that we were able to pass last year in the New York State Senate, which eliminated the cash bail for a multitude of offenses, which I think was extremely important on the state level. In addition to that, I currently represent Sing Sing Prison, and I've worked with Hudson Link, which is a program that provides basically bachelor's degrees and even master's degrees to people that are incarcerated. And we know the facts are clear that if you do receive education or even a trade skill in prison, that your recidivism rate plummets. It's something like we know that unfortunately recidivism rate is high because of the obvious issues that we know about. But if we get someone a college degree, a bachelor's degree in prison, the recidivism rate drops to below 2%. So that's something that we unfortunately have been attacked on in the state for providing funding for those programs. But I believe that's something that should be accessible across the country. That if we allow, when someone is incarcerated, to have that opportunity to better themselves, why not? You know, and we should be offering that opportunity. We know that the overwhelming majority, this is the argument that I have with people that push back at me for having that high level of education in our prisons, is that the overwhelming majority of people will be released and will be your neighbors in the community. And we need to make sure that they have a way to succeed and contribute to the community and not have this repetition of recidivism. One of the other things as well that I'm pushing on the federal level is to increase the Pell Grant program. You know, the Pell Grant program was designed 40 years ago. And at that time, it worked really well because it almost covered the cost of a college education. It has not kept up with inflation. And so now it only covers a little piece of what it actually costs to go to college. I think, you know, that's one program that we, again, don't have to reinvent the wheel. But if we doubled the program, we could provide a real opportunity for people to get a college education, but I think also be able to get trained in the trade of their choice that will help them succeed. So I think there's a mixture there of, yes, the traditional bachelor's, master's, you know, associates, but also to be able to develop a real technical skill. We know that's extremely important for the jobs of the future.